Hi everyone, I'm Maira Genovese. I'm the CEO and founder of MG Empower, a global integrated marketing agency. Today, we are joined by a woman who has redefined what leadership looks like across media, culture, and now technology. Someone who has broken barriers, shaped iconic brands, and it's now helping steer the future of business and creativity in the AI era. From transforming British Vogue to leading Google's technology, media, and telecoms division, Vanessa Kingori's journey is a masterclass in vision, resilience, and bold reinvention. Vanessa, what a pleasure to have you here.
It's so good to be here. Yeah.
We've been trying for a few months.
It's like the definition of busy women.
Exactly, which is good.
And now we're here.
But I feel like so honored.
It's going to be worth waiting for.
So
just you and I sharing.
100%.
I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah.
And so grateful to our friend Michelle that has introduced us, because we're here because of her.
We're so lucky to have intentional friends who really care
100%.
about our networks.
Yes.
And actually, it's not luck. I think it's the
It's
energy
the
you put
universe.
out.
It's
Yeah.
like when God wants to put
Yes.
people together,
I
he
think so.
he finds a way.
Yeah.
But tell me, I'm just like, I'm a big admiration of your work,
thank you.
how you position yourself, everything that you have done and changing so many, aspects of your career, but also your personal life. But let's start off, like, who is Vanessa?
Oh, wow. That's I'm a human being.
Which is a good answer.
I know it's a really strange thing to say right now, but I feel that it's worth saying out loud in the tech era, where so much of what we are talking about is about productivity, is about efficiency, is about increased output, particularly at work. Yeah. And I love my career, but I also love life and living. And so I think it's important to say that if I even look at the wellness industry, I'm a wellness girly, all of it is about maximizing your sleep so you can work harder, and this supplement so you can work harder. Let's live. And I think particularly in the careers that we have where you're leading people or you're communicating with people through marketing and PR and so on, my career is one facet of the whole self. I never knew actually I wanted to have the career I have. I didn't know growing up what I wanted to do. I always knew I wanted to be a mother. And pretty early on, I knew that I would be a citizen of the world through virtue of my parents and my parentage. And so I am an explorer, a dreamer, an organizer, and someone who likes to fix things that may not be working in the best possible way. But I'm full of all of the human frailty and human desires as everybody else, So I think it's important to say that.
No, 100%. I love that. And then, like, because you talk about I'm a human, and then we're human being, which I love that you said that the era that we're living today now.
Yeah.
So it's AI and technology, and then even the robots now. When you go to conference and you go see the robots around, you're like, no, guys, so it's bringing back the human being.
Yeah.
But do you think that your childhood had a lot of impact on the way you're just describing yourself?
Hugely, yeah. In a big way, because I had a very unusual, I guess, childhood. I don't know that it is, but for the circle I'm in now, I was born in Kenya.
Amazing.
To a Kenyan father who met my mother here in London. My mother is from the Caribbean. So they moved back to Kenya, pushing for Kenyan independence. So my mother was the only non-Kenyan in the area where I was born and so on, apart from some expats. And then I moved from Kenya very young to the Caribbean for a time. And I spent really my formative years there with my grandmother, who is a very, very, very wise woman, worldly in her mind, and who really set my work ethic and my vision for how to interact with people with strength and kindness and giving everyone a fair chance. And then I moved to London at 7. And this was,
how was moving from like Kenya, Caribbean to like London?
It was crazy in so many ways because I had never experienced so many things. I remember moving and was like, what do all these trees do? What fruit do they bear? And people were like, it's just a tree, And I never experienced drizzle, it was either sunny or raining. Right?
So true.
I'd never worn a coat before.
There's no...
So even before you get into like the culture, it was in a sensory way so different. But it was very, very good for me because culturally the exposure that you get in London, I think, is unmatched around the world.
So true.
Without even trying too hard, You don't have to go looking for...
Don't.
But I think having the 3 cultures was very defining for me because when you have experienced in your formative years 3 very different cultures, you start to learn what are the common threads, I think, across culture, across humanity, and what are the stories we tell ourselves that are made up. There's structures within a culture. And so there are certain things that I was like, wow, okay, that's the same everywhere, And there are other things that I learned were cultural constructs. I didn't have the language for that. But certainly the idea that, for example, people are organized and different based on, let's say, race, for me was learned very early because I saw in Kenya, in St. Kitts and Nevis in the Caribbean, and then in London, that most people who were doing the things that they loved were either based on hard work, dedication, or maybe connections, right? Sure. And nothing to do with these other attributes. And so I think that was very grounding for me because what it taught me is that I can really achieve anything that I put my mind to, as long as I surrounded myself with the right circle, if I could, and worked really hard and with intention. And so I do think a lot of the myths that some people are held back by, that I see, I was fortunately dissolved of very early.
That's beautiful.
I also think I learned to adapt very quickly, which in this stage of my career, as I pivot a lot and I change from thing to thing, like when you have to assimilate and connect with people who are not the same as you very young, it becomes less scary when you're older. So
your exposure is like a young age. You moved like 7 years old, and then going to school, probably there was just like a big,
huge,
like shock in terms of a new word. Basically.
Different accents, different faces, the schooling system completely different.
Yes.
Different practices. So once you learn to adapt, I think one of the things that's really important for people to know is if you have done a big adaptation in any part of your life once, you can do it again, right? And so I often think about women, and how much women question themselves and wait to be like 110% ready to go into a career change. But women are intrinsically adapting all of the time because of, frankly, their cycle, moving through different stages with their bodies, with their lives. We are always constantly evolving ourselves and adapting. So actually you can extrapolate that out. If you've been a mother, you have gone through the biggest adaptation life can ever throw at you. And then these women are saying, oh, I don't know if I can. I'm like, do you know what you just did? Like, this is crazy. Of course you can do that thing. It's really about the mindset. Yeah.
And then okay, moving to London and then adaptability, which I think is such an important thing for us to talk about it because, to adapt to change is what's going to make you successful in anything you wanted to achieve.
Yes.
But if you don't have that mindset of adaptability, you can get stuck with your mind.
100%.
And then growing up in London, career-wise, because you have, as you said, has been very adapting on moving careers, on, changing your path. how fashion came into your life, because you have now someone that's very well known in the fashion industry, but not just well known for the fact that you're a fashionista, you're well known because everything that you have done within the industry. How fashion came to your life?
It's funny, you know, when I really think about it, fashion was knocking at my door in a lot of different ways. So I was scouted as a model when I was 14 or 15. And my parents were really not interested. They were scared. It was in the era where the models were always in the news being misbehaving. And they are very educationally focused. What's really interesting is that Kenya ranks very highly in the world and certainly in Africa in terms of educational standards. It's taken very, very seriously. And in St. Kitts, where my mother's from, it's also ranked one of the highest in the Caribbean.
Incredible.
So I have two parents who are like,
Education.
just get it. Yeah,
key.
we work super hard to get you in this position where you can have this amazing education. Do that and then have your base and then you can do whatever.
You can do whatever, yeah.
But in the end, I managed to kind of convince them I could do both. And I started modeling a little bit, albeit I wasn't fully in, and it is something you probably need to be fully in.
Yeah.
But it was really, really fascinating for me because I fell in love with fashion, but not with modeling. And it was very, very useful for me as someone coming from so outside of the industry where I don't have those family connections or, you know, my family were very working class at this point. We were not shopping in these brands and so on. Modeling was very useful for me to understand what I loved and what I didn't like. So one of the reasons that I was not a great model in terms of, like, I booked jobs, I worked with Vivienne Westwood, who was she was so defining for me, actually, because she was so radical and her fashion was not just about beautiful pieces, but always political. And coming from the Caribbean, fashion has always been a little bit political as well. You're a statement of who you are and who you're going to be, of pride. And so I really resonated with her and she booked me and so on. And although I booked lots of jobs, I had too much to say. In that time, the model was really a blank canvas.
It was a blank canvas.
It wasn't the days now where everybody has a social platform, everybody has another.
Come to the studio, do the fitting, walk,
and I was asking questions, and why wouldn't we? And what if we? And they're looking at me like, oh my gosh,
who
this
is that girl?
Precarious little teenager. And so it was very good for me because I got exposed to some of the people actually I know now. I didn't know who they were, but I was having really incredible conversations and I was witnessing this entire machine that you see a beautiful image at the end or you see a garment and you have no idea the sort of hundreds of people that go into making that moment with the garment. And it opened up my eyes to the number of career paths that could be possible. And so it was great. My parents were complaining all along the way. I think they triggered a little bit of defiance in me that I was like, I'm going to stick with it, even though it's not for me. But I met some incredible people and it got my mind turning. And so that was the first one. At a certain point, I had to prioritize university. It was too much.
What did you do for university?
I did marketing and sociology, which was super interesting because I didn't do it because of a career plan. I did it because of my interest, which I would advise everyone to do.
Communication, marketing is the way.
Exactly. So I did that, and sociology was also super interesting to me, I guess, because of this cultural experience I had moving around and this macro experience of these different cultures and then how it boiled down. So the two things to me felt very hand in hand. It was very unusual at the time, but so that was the first instance. And then when I was studying, of course, I come from a working class family. When a lot of my friends were off, you know, doing their sports and having those other, I had to work. But I wanted to work in a way that filled who I was. So I didn't take a job local to the university. I was coming into London and working in stores in fashion.
Amazing.
And so I got a job with Matches Fashion, which
Yes.
was
We
amazing.
mismatched every
We-
single day. Matt's come back
I
soon.
know it was like such a dream for me because I had a few different retail jobs. I loved all of them. But Matches was really where I fell in love with the whole idea of convening people and marketing through heart. And Tom and Ruth, who were the owners of Matches, were so kind to me, even though I was basically a Saturday girl, you know.
Wow.
They saw something, and I was included. Actually, a lot of their staff were included in the bigger conversation, the buying decisions. How do we market?
incredible.
How do we connect with consumers who are busy and don't really need anything else, you know? And so they taught me that you need to know your customer and your consumer. So I knew every coffee order, which drinks every customer liked, and then their preferences, their children, their wife, their partner. Then I ended up doing a little bit of personal shopping with them, where we would have to preempt based on their shop. This was back in the day.
That was wonder. Which year was that one? Because they were not e-com yet.
No,
There
this was the noughties, early noughties. There was
Wow.
no e-com. There was no practice of like data
The app,
capture,
the data
CRM,
capture.
and
Wow,
so
you
on.
got there from the
But
early,
they
early
had a
age.
database of their customers, and and each store, it was the responsibility to know them well. So a lot of our time was making the space so that customers would just pop in if they were in there, not because they were buying anything,
Just to
have
make
a
it the
coffee,
experience unique.
to chat. Hey guys, I was just passing. Okay, let's have a coffee. And they did not mind if you sat with someone for 2 hours, you didn't sell anything, because they saw it as part of the experience. And all of that was data
Wow.
capture, because that customer would say, oh my gosh, I have three trips coming up, and it's my daughter's birthday, and you know, my wife, we have an anniversary, and all of these things. We would then say, okay, well, listen, if you don't have time because you're
We
on
can
trips,
help.
we can send everything to the house and you can choose from there, or I can pull some pieces from you. So for me, that was the early stages of learning how to market on a personalization level, right?
We're talking about years
Yes,
ago. They were very
yeah.
pioneer on this.
Super
Yeah.
pioneering. And the power of personal connection, the power of ease, creating ease in busy people's lives. And this really stayed with me for a really, really long time. And then my career went in a different way. Once I graduated, I took some time. I continued to work with Matches. I learned from them. And then I went into events, which is really pivotal now, which in ways I'm going to explain. But I really think the power of convening people elegantly around a purpose, whether it be a celebration or a talking point, is more important than ever in the AI era. And so these are all kind of happy accidents. Like someone at Matches who was a very good customer said, oh my gosh, someone is recruiting for events director. And I was like, I've never done director.
Before.
But they said, you would be amazing because it's all about connecting, da 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 da. Why don't you just meet them? And then I met that person and I thought, I don't want to embarrass my customer, so I'm going to be the best I can be. And then I got this job, and then I thought, I didn't know I wanted to do this. But every single opportunity that came, whether by luck or actually through nurturing relationships, I just was like, I'm going to give it my all.
You were never afraid.
Never afraid. And I wanted to be excellent so that would connect me to something else, because I didn't know which paths to choose.
Which path to choose, because you're so young.
I didn't know which paths were
the
even
moment
there.
To try.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then then I entered media through that. And then the day I started in national press, this incredible man, so I went to an intern, and he said to me, not the day, in the first 2 weeks, he said, wow, one day you are going to be the publisher of Vogue.
I have goosebumps.
It was in the first 2 weeks. I'm an intern now in media, starting brand new. And I didn't even know what the job was. But I was like, okay, Vogue, I had Vogue.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And again, I guess fashion kind of found me because I was working in the national press, and then someone saw me, led me into the fashion section of that, and that led on to jobs in magazines and so on and so forth. So all of it was quite organic with, the hard work meets opportunity.
Like I 100%. You're probably not going to remember. We met when you were at Squire a long time ago because I was working at Dax.
Yes.
At Bond Street with Joey Smith.
With Joe.
Yes. And I remember I started with Joe as a PR and marketing assistant early age, and then Joe said, "Oh, we're gonna go to Squire," and it was in Soho,
Broadway Street. Yeah, oh my gosh.
And then I went there with Joe, and then she said, "Oh, you're gonna meet Vanessa. She's from Squire," and then she kind of briefed me about you, but I was just like, but I remember clearly coming into Squire, the headquarters,
the building there. I love that job so much. I was like, I'm in heaven. I was working on menswear. For some reason, menswear was always, my grandfather was so incredibly well dressed. He was like, so I just loved everything about it. And interestingly, a lot of the contacts were women. And it was this perfect mix for me of working in fashion, but on the business side, working in menswear, but with women. I loved that job so much.
Yeah, I have good memories too. And then British Vogue.
Yes.
Do you think British Vogue was your turning point in the sense of I got it? Not saying I've got it to the top, but do you think that British Vogue really shaped your next move?
No, I think GQ was. I think British Vogue helped everybody understand what I did within the industry, but GQ was by far the role that shaped me because it was the most difficult.
Because it's men's, right?
Yeah. But it was leadership. So Esquire was like, I'm in the team, I'm part of the team, I'm everybody's best friend. Yes. Of course, it's fashion, so there's a little bit of friction here and there, but we were like a gang. The creative director of Esquire is still a dear friend. The editors, it was just open and it was amazing. It was an
amazing team, amazing energy.
Amazing team, incredible energy. I was no threat to anybody because I was just like this little girl who came from press, eager. Everybody brought me into the world. GQ, I was headhunted. And I won this huge award at Hearst. It was then Nat Mags.
Yes.
And Hearst gave me this global award. At that time, Condé Nast and Hearst were fierce competitors. And Condé Nast was very closed. You could not ever see a job advertised there. It was posh totty, was all the girls who had, double-barreled names, landed gentry. It was not even on my realm that it was possible to get a job there. I didn't even think about it. And I won this award, and I think the next day, I got a call.
Wow.
And the then president said, we want to talk to you about a job. Can you meet with the publisher of GQ? And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I said, what is the job, if you don't mind me asking? And he said, we don't know yet. Wow. And so I had this incredible scenario where they hired me very quickly. I think I had one interview, which wasn't an interview, it was a coffee, where it was so surreal. This publisher was selling Condé Nast to me. I'm like, I know what Condé Nast is, And then before I knew it, I was working there, and it was nuts because this place that I thought would be the hardest place to enter, that it was not even on my radar, I suddenly was there with 2 conversations, and I had the time of my life within the team. I went there leading the fashion business, working very closely with the fashion team, who were like nothing I ever experienced, grand dames and big names and these super famous in our industry. And it was like awe-inspiring for me. But I think for some people it was like, you're so different. You're like, who do you know? And everybody there was like the niece of so-and-so, the daughter of so-and-so. Everybody was one degree of separation. And I didn't know anybody. I didn't go to the same schools. I did not ski and go on those trips. I didn't holiday in the same place. I didn't ride horses. So I was really like this,
very different.
Very, very different. And rather than it being intimidating at that stage, I thought, this is amazing, because everybody's going to know who I am and be intrigued, and I am going to treat. And people were actually very, very nice to me. They were just curious. And so I just lent into that, and I lent into my experience being very young, going to these schools where everybody had different experiences, and just decided to assume best intent. I think once the key tough learning began was when I went from being in the team to the leader.
Wow. And how long did it take for that to happen?
Very fast. Because my work ethic is like, you have to remember, like, I'm standing on the shoulders of my grandmother. My great-grandfather was a slave picking cotton.
Wow.
My grandmother left school at 14 with the intention of my daughter and my grandchildren will be educated to the highest extent. She taught herself. She had to leave school to pick cotton on the same plantations that she was freed from.
Wow.
And she read and she read and she read, and she set this intention that every generation would have the world at their feet. And would have
beautiful.
So I am in this space, and I'm working thinking, like, 2 generations ago, my grandmother would die to be in London. She was reading Dickens and Shakespeare, and she never, ever came to London, but she knew everything about it. And she wanted for us to have these broad cultural experience. And here I am in the center of culture.
The center of culture, 100%.
And so I'm like, I'm living her dream. My mother then worked incredibly hard, left her homeland at 17, came to London, and was very intentional about my sister and I being educated to the highest level in London so we could be in these spaces. And so now I am in a space which is top of the tree, where people are like quite relaxed, because they're like, well, we're number one. There's nowhere else to go. There's no bigger men's magazine, and magazines were really big. But my mindset was like, it is like a 1 in a million chance that you're here. No one else like you is here. No one in your lineage has ever been given this opportunity. And you have come from the number 2 title where everybody had to fight.
And
you had to meet with everybody, like, every single client, Dax and everyone. You had to meet with them regularly. I arrived at GQ and I was like, when did you last see Dax? And they're like, I'm not sure. I'm like, oh.
How?
So I applied my grandmother's work ethic, my mother's work ethic, and also the work ethic I had experienced when you are not number 1 in the market. And so what happened is, my bosses were like, wow,
who is that?
What is going on? I didn't know it was unusual. And so very quickly, I think in like 18 months or something like that, they made me publisher of GQ Style, a role it didn't exist before. And this had really became to define my career. They had a magazine that was being ignored. It was a bi-monthly fashion spin-off of GQ. It didn't have an editorial team. I don't know how it came to be by obligation, but no one was giving it love. And I saw everyone wants to be the publisher of Vogue or the publisher of GQ and the publisher of Vanity Fair. I felt like I have no chance, because there's this whole line of people waiting
for it.
But no one cares about this thing. And it is way easier to prove yourself on something that has no proof of case, to build something from nothing, than to take something that is already winning. And so I pitched to my bosses. They said, we want to, They said, you're doing incredible. We want to step you up, but it's very competitive. And so, we see you as going for this role, very linear, work really hard and you're going to, and I thought there's 5 people going for that role. And I said, what about if I took GQ style? I did something similar at the Evening Standard. I created a fashion mag. The editor wanted this and I helped to create it. And I said, I would love to do that. And they said, okay, we agree to create that title. Hasn't existed before, but there's no budget. Wow. You have to work within the GQ budget, which means you need to convince the publisher of GQ to share that budget, or you need to create it through revenue. I said, okay, no problem.
Oh, we do it.
I started my first business when I was 8, so I know how to make revenue. And I thought, what's the harm? You know what I mean?
Let's try.
Let's try. And so I managed to charm everybody to
I can see
get involved, be excited. Like, this is revenue from nowhere. This is a chance to be super creative because it's not a really commercial entity.
This is something that we can have more freedom.
And I'm very good at understanding creatives. And so to the editors, I would say that, within these big magazines that are so scrutinized, you have to work within a certain line. Here, do what you want.
Do what you want. Yeah, do the freedom.
Yeah, and they really bought into that. And so I was able to build a very credible, significant business that within a year and a half was making more money than some of the other monthly magazines.
Wow.
And from that, then the bosses were like, okay. But with that also came a lot of frustration, because once you create something that is successful, it's human nature for it to seem easy. It's like, okay,
It's not.
Yeah, but once it's done, it's obvious.
Yes.
And so people were a little bit frustrated that like, well, how come she's jumping the queue and so on? But I had a lot of amazing supporters. I used my convening power, everything I learned in events, and what I learned in just connecting with people, learning that very young is that you have to make the effort when you're the outsider to connect. And you also have to silence the noise and not make that the main event.
The main event in your head.
And
yes.
And then very quickly from that, I became the publisher of GQ. And that was really hard because that was the one that there was a whole line of people waiting.
And then you got it.
Again, our bosses, rightly or wrongly, did not interview anyone else for the job because they said, look, it's no contest.
Yours, it's meant for you.
And that was hard because, this is why I say I learned so much, because a lot of the people who were rooting for me before were suddenly like, is this too big? Like, is it too fast? Is it fair? Which is a fair question, They wanted me to prove myself. And I was challenged with a big change. And I'm very good at change. And I had to convince people. Then I was the youngest publisher, I believe ever, certainly working in the business. The first female publisher, of course, it's GQ. And the first person of color. And I think the youngest was the thing that was the biggest
How
impact.
old you were?
I must have been barely 30. And, the person I was replacing was well into their 50s, but has an air that was much older.
Okay.
You have to imagine this is back in the days where it was almost like Mad Men. Everybody was in grey suits. The person I was replacing went to Sandhurst. Very military, very
big change.
Hierarchical leader. In fact, one of the things I've realized is everyone I have replaced has been ex-military. It's interesting.
Very
Male,
interesting.
older, ex-military. At the point where there needs to be change, it is no longer, and also when you're young, hierarchy doesn't work. So
in
I
this
learned,
generation, even worse.
Because I look super young and I look younger than I was even. And even though I had a track record, it just was weird to go from this guy who was in cut suits and spoke with a booming voice and was like, had a plan to like, okay, let's figure it out. Let's all pitch to get. People were like,
What's she
what?
talking about?
It's your job to tell us, But equally when I told them, they were like, oh, this feels weird. So at first I tried to replicate the way I'd seen it done. Didn't work for me. And then I said, you know what? If I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail doing it my way. I need to convene people. I need to convince people, not dictate to them. And we were trying to go for a big digital conversion. At that time, GQ and Condé and Nast were unique. They were still making a lot of money in print, selling print magazines.
And then there's all publication was already going to digital.
Everyone else was going to digital.
It took a lot of time to go to digital.
And I'd come from national press where everything was going digital. I'd come from Esquire where these were things that were being considered. And because of the success, they were behind. So no one could feel the impetus to change. And I had to be it. And they were saying, we're winning awards all of the time. I just want a Mark Boxer Prize. Now you want me to do extra work, writing long form editorial pieces, and then writing snappy social media posts and digital. Why should I do this? I'm winning. And I realized that it's like you have to have people see what's in it for them. But it was hard. It was hard because for the first time, I didn't have everyone cheering me on. I had people questioning, really doubting, my friends going, and it's sitting uncomfortably that suddenly I had been in the pub with them.
And then out of the sudden,
and then suddenly I'm in the big office, right? And so I had to use a lot of what I learned in sociology, actually, about understanding how culture works, yeah? Not just as a societal level. Each space you work in is a microculture, and you have to identify the different tribes within it and work with them in a different way in order to bring them onto your way of thinking. So GQ is where I made so many mistakes. I did so much learning, but ultimately the fast success there is where I created templates for what to do and what not to do. Yeah.
I love that story. And then but how did you navigate that? Like when you say about it was like a time that I was with the pub and then all of a sudden I was in the big office.
Yeah. It was
because it's in a way, it's like I wouldn't say rejection, but it's in a rejection in a way, right? And then it's not everyone that is ready to feel rejected or to accept it of not being accepted. So how did you navigate in order to keep resilience, to keep it going? Because you have to have a lot of resilience of not letting that noise of what people think or not think about your position and creates that mindset of I'm just going to
focus.
But it's tough.
Yeah.
It is really tough.
Leadership is very, very lonely. And it's something that people don't tell you before.
Oh my God. It's
I also
very
had
lonely,
zero leadership training. And it was like this. The boss that I was replacing, I didn't know that they had been in long conversation for him to go and do another job. So by the time I had finished negotiating, he had been 2 months late to start the job. So on the day we announced it, I signed the contract, the next day it was announced, and he left that day. Wow. No handover.
No handover at all.
He handed me a folder.
And that was it.
He said, this is the office. He made an announcement. He said, guys, Vanessa's going to be great. Please trust her. I'm going to my other role. It was also in the company, but international. Bye. And it was like that. I literally moved my things from one desk with the team to the big office in front of everyone. And that was it. You're on your own.
I love it.
And it was crazy because there's a few things I learned. One is I think we are teaching people in a lesson that is not valuable about fitting in and assimilating and the culture of that. I think it's very important to be comfortable being an outsider. I think there's nothing more valuable in an organization than having an outsider or a few within your teams.
Totally.
And outsider from all different perspectives. And you have to remember, all of my life I've been an outsider, a very comfortable, happy outsider. When we moved from Kenya to St. Kitts, we were the African girls. We were not Caribbean. We had accents. We were very different. But I realized that it wasn't a problem. People celebrated it. They were curious. So instead of taking it as an insult, it was like, this is how everybody knows us. We're famous,
We're famous. Off we
Tiny
go.
village in a tiny island. There's these two African girls with, all of these stories. When we moved from St. Kitts to London, no one had ever heard of St. Kitts. They were like, are you Jamaican? But you don't sound Jamaican, because we had this crazy accent that was a little bit Kenyan, a little bit Kittishan. St. Kitts you can't even find on a globe. It's so small. So I would say I'm from there, and people would be looking and like, it doesn't exist. Are you sure? And so I was a super outsider. Then I went to school, and because of the education, they were saying, oh, your sister and yourself need to be moved a year up. Like in every way. Also, I'm so tall. I'm an outsider. I was the only Black person in my class. I'm an outsider. But for me, it was never a problem. In my mindset.
In your mind, because you have a very good mindset that was not letting you to make
I don't even know if it was good, but I think the cultures that I come from, and maybe this will resonate, is where it's not the British culture where you fit in and you're one.
No.
Everyone's a peacock. In Africa and in the Caribbean, your aim is not to fit in. Your aim is, if you go to church in the Caribbean, it's like a fashion show. Going back to you paint your house not the same color. What color is no one else painted it? So for me, standing out only became a problem when I started to adopt English ways. And so I had to go back to, you're a happy outsider. You've always been this way. Lean into that.
Lean into that and don't let this to change you. And then talk about fitting in.
Yeah.
You have to fit in the industry of technology when you went to Google.
Yeah.
Because then is another extreme. So you went to a very male-dominated world.
Yeah.
Technology. It's still, when you look at the percentage of women and men, it's like...
And getting worse.
It's getting worse, especially with AI now. Yeah. But you had the courage to say, I'm doing it. And then it was first, I think, women being hired by Google, if I'm not wrong.
I replaced another military man.
You replaced another military man.
Male-led team. It was like back being in GQ.
How was it? It's like, okay, I'm going to go to tech and I'm going to and go to Google, which we're talking about the giant of technology.
I mean, to be honest, by this stage, I'm so intentional about what I'm doing. And to let you into a secret, I founded a company in 2020, the year after my son was born, with a 5-year plan.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, in 5 to 6 years, I want to be working for myself. And this is going to take time, and I need to have a strategy, and I need to lean into all the things I'm good at, but I also need to plug the gaps of the things that I don't know.
And tech was one of them.
And tech was one of them. And at that time, now the media industry is in a little bit of a frenzy around tech. Mm-hmm. Initially, it felt to me like the early days of social media. We navigated it. I was a big part of helping the media industry adapt, accept, include. I worked so closely with all the tech companies then, and I was bringing in YouTube and Google to do talks.
You had to do the transition, right?
Yeah. No, but I realized a big part of my job at Condé Nast when I became chief business officer of all the brands was to bring technology in to make it less scary. So I started to develop the relationships the business needed, but also
with
I needed.
The tech platforms.
So I was flying to New York and meeting with Instagram, Ava Chen, making these relationships that didn't exist at Meta, and saying to her, who can you send? Can you train my team to really understand how to, but at the same time I was learning.
Of course, because it was a new thing for you too.
And Ava Chen was saying, where is your account? But you're the star. I'm like, no, I'm behind the scenes. I'm not. She said, yeah, people want to know. This is what people want to know.
Yes.
So she encouraged me to start an account, and she encouraged me to build my own following, no matter what, just like she had done. She was very instrumental. And then I was like, we need YouTube. Vogue doesn't have video. And so I started to know Google and bringing them in to educate the team on how do we create the best video? How do our videos perform? I made it my personal KPI to get Vogue to 1 million followers on YouTube so that we could build a video platform. And in doing that, of course, I became friends. I understood.
And learning. And
they were asking me to come and speak at their key moments. And I was like, wow, this is another space like Condé Nast that feels excluding and exclusive.
And here I am.
But here I am, and they are interested in me, but I'm interested in them. So there's an exchange there. So I set this intention that I need to fill that gap before I can go and do my own thing. And they were approaching me, and I was like, this is amazing, but I'm going to do my due diligence. And I'm going to try to understand all of the tech companies, and I'm going to pick the one that's most values aligned. Even though I know it's going to be super challenging, I'm going to fall on the fact that it's okay to be an outsider. You can learn on the job.
You have learned that before.
We can do hard things. It's not forever. And also, it's risk.
Yeah,
if it isn't for me,
you cannot lose anything on trying.
My motto in life, I have a few mottos, is if you are going to fail, fail on your own terms.
Exactly.
Right?
And fail fast and fail. It's good for learning.
It's okay.
It's okay.
So by this point, I had multiple revenue streams already. I had made sure that I had savings. I was very, very frugal in the Vogue era.
That's good.
To make sure that I had, with this plan in mind, because once you have a plan, you can start to put the wheels in place. So everything seems like, oh my God, this crazy pivot, but I was really building to it for a long time. What if I fail? Okay, you have other things. I never have one revenue stream. I never look at my job as who I am. And I never look at my job as how I make money. My job for me is very important, but it is one revenue stream. I always and I learned that from my grandmother. My grandmother would never say I grew up on a farm, and she would say you can't rely on the crops to be successful. No, so what else do you have? So she would sew, she would make things. And this is ingrained with me. So I was doing speaker engagements. I had my consultancy, and Condé Nast were kind of okay with that because everything I was learning on the boards in these gigs, I was bringing back,
absolutely,
refreshing the company. So it was a calculated risk by the time I went to Google. They had been talking to me at this point for nearly 3 years. I knew they wanted me. And I had this feeling of, if it doesn't work, it's all data.
Okay, all data, yes. And then what an amazing experience working for a big corporation as Google.
It was hard. It was still hard. I would not tell anyone a lie in that learning, especially with a little child at home, and leading while learning, you have to be very vulnerable. And another advice I would give is that it is really, really important to lean into your vulnerability and not pretend
it's okay.
So this is where being, I think, a woman and using some of my, what I would say more feminine leading traits of, I don't mind being vulnerable. I don't need this to be a hierarchy. I know your previous boss was military. I've done this before.
Did it before. Wow.
We're not going to work like that.
Interesting.
Now, you know things I don't know. I know things you don't know. Let's pool. I'm going to elevate you because I don't know that. So now you're going to become the expert of that. I'm going to be the expert of this. So I created a really collaborative team set where people felt valued because all of a sudden they were useful in a different way, and I was platforming them. And that's really how I navigated that big pivot at Google, but also because I built myself a safety net. I was never born with a safety net. I was always around people who inherited a safety net through Condé Nast. And I thought, okay, the thing that's allowing them to be audacious is a safety net. I'm going to need to build one. So that's
Beautiful.
What I did.
You talked once to me about personal IP. And I think now talking about story, what you have been doing is because I never heard about personal IP until we had a phone call conversation. And I love that. If you can describe personal IP, what do you say that's the definition of a personal IP?
I think that it is one of the most overlooked resources that we personally have in this digital age, and it's transformative. We always had it, actually, but now people are interested in who you are and what you're willing to share and in your journey. And so if you look at my Instagram account, it looks super fun. Sometimes it looks glamorous. It looks like I'm always on holiday, but it's very intentional. I want for people to understand that I'm someone who works hard, works with empathy, and I work hard because I also have a life, and that's a key part of my personal IP. And it means that when people meet you, they're already bought in to a certain extent, not just on your CV, but in who you are.
Who you are, yes.
So you don't have to work as hard, educated, but this is why I do this and I might need this. People already say, well, I know you have a kid, so is that time going to work for you? They're there already.
They already know.
They care about your value system if they've engaged. And also, you can write your own narrative. What I noticed in some of the roles that I was going for that were deeply competitive, where women often opt out, you know, that this is, and not only women, I think people who are not centered, who maybe are like, oh, well, English isn't my first language, so maybe I'm not going to be great at this level. Will I be good in the boardroom? Maybe people won't understand me. You make that part of your personal IP, right? And so for me, I realized when you are in these very competitive roles, and when Edward and I were appointed to Vogue, there was initially a backlash because it was like, why these people who there's been this whole line, people didn't know what we'd achieved.
Yes, they just wanted to judge without knowing the why.
Yeah, and suddenly it was public. Because in GQ was industry, and people were like, oh, in the industry, she's doing great. Oh my gosh, you know. And then suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, the Daily Mail is covering, oh my God, you know. And I realized that I'm 6 foot tall. I look like a diva. I had to, you know, and I had to share this other side of myself. And that's my personal IP, is that I connect through empathy. I am strong. I am tough, but actually I really lead with empathy, and most people handle when I'm tough because they know I care.
They know you care, yeah.
But it's very hard to give that quickly if you're not sharing. So people think about LinkedIn, I need to talk about my career and what I'm doing and da-da-da-da, or Instagram is for fun. But actually, these are really important personal marketing tools that are more valuable than your resume.
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
and it's important, so important to build. And I'm not saying I'm even always nailing it, but I do think it has been really instrumental in not only dispelling myths about me, but also in having people lean into the fact that I will lead differently. And they're already a little bit aware of that. Yeah.
I love your story, and I resonate a lot. I'm from
Yes.
Brazil. I've been here for 21 years.
Yeah.
And to be where I am today, oh my God, it's like, is another podcast.
It's
because
so many hurdles.
It's just so many hurdles. And I love what you said about think about being the outsider.
Yeah.
Because if you let the noise come into your mind, it's just very difficult to find the courage and the strength and the resilience to face all of that and think that I can do it, because the foundation of where we've been born and then how we've been raised and the examples that you gave from your grandmother. 100%. I have the same examples from my grandfather. Those kind of like childhood, sometimes we think that is not impact on how we are growing and evolve, but actually I think it's just like is a big part of
It's huge.
Who we are today is how we've been raised.
Honestly,
and educated.
like I have a very specific view that I'm trying to educate a lot of people I work with in the world on around generational wealth.
Yes.
And so there's a big conversation in certain communities around how do you build generational wealth? How do you succeed if you don't have generational wealth financially? And I think it's very valid, because so many people I know who are entrepreneurs, they could fail fast because they had, not that they didn't work hard, not that they didn't, but they had that family background. And so yes, generational wealth is important. And certainly for my family, I want to build it. I'm very intentional about that. However, I feel wealthy, even though I grew up on a farm with a grandmother who left school at 14 years old. I was wealthy because this woman gave me the human tools to be in any room and feel okay.
I love that.
This is a woman who picked cotton, but had everyone in her house, from dignitaries and judges to, in the Caribbean, the Rastafarians who live in a mud hut.
That.
And she taught me that humans are humans. You go for the attributes and you belong.
You belong.
And so this kind of wealth in the work ethic, in the belonging, in the believing in the parts of yourself, that not focusing so much in what's wrong, because we all have shortcomings.
Oh my God, a lot.
But a lot of Western culture teaches us to be very focused on why we are not right, rather than why we can be additive. And so I feel like for me, that is a wealth like no other. And so I was wealthy, and I want to dispel this myth that like only financial wealth, and financial wealth is important. And don't get me wrong, it gives a huge advantage.
But it's not everything.
It's not everything. And I would choose the wisdom, wealth I was given, rather than money if I had to choose. So I think people can redefine this and reframe this for themselves. And it may not be that. It may be hardship. Some of the most successful people I know had horrible childhoods.
Oh my God, yes.
You know, I had a great childhood, but for them, that is their driving force. So I think it's really about reframing and being confident in what makes you you, rather than what makes you not somebody else.
And what is next for Vanessa?
Well, I am at the point of my 5-year plan, just a teeny bit late because I was at Google for slightly longer, but I've left Google now. I have an amazing relationship with them, and now I'm unbelievably privileged to be working in a space that very few are or can, which is the intersection of culture and media and tech. And so I am brand building and business building with some of the world's most incredible brands, helping them pivot either at a human level, at like exec team level, or at a revenue stream diversification level. And I'm consulting. I really feel the future of consulting is very different.
Very different.
Where we have to, I think it's important to have people who deeply understand industries rather than how the traditional business works.
100%.
And so that's really meaningful for me because it's a dream realized. It's a dream that was, I was going to say 5 years in the making, but probably longer. And it is testament to me of the power of planning, the power of self-belief, the power of building relationships, because, you know, an industry I left years ago is now embracing me again.
That's beautiful.
So I'm now working with fashion, working with media brands, working with tech brands, public speaking around the world, on thought leadership, and working on things I really, really care about, and building new platforms that are to come outside of that, that are all the things that I felt were missing in the multiple industries I've worked in.
It's your legacy, right?
It's my legacy.
It's your legacy, which is just like inspirational.
Yeah, it's really exciting. But, you know, none of this is possible without all of the people who have cheered for me, and there have been many.
I always like to say that in life, we don't achieve anything if we don't have angels that come pass through your journey, and because it just takes one person to believe in you.
100%.
Because sometimes you can be in a room of like 10 people, 9 of them, they're not believing you. But if you have one, that is our angel. And I think it's so important for us to recognize that where we are and where we're going, we always had an angel.
Never do it alone.
That look at us inside our eyes and say, I believe in you and I'm going to give you a chance.
I love that.
Gratitude mindset is how we can get more angels to come past
and
your
I'm
lives.
very lucky. I mean, you've seen even how we were convened is I have a core group of people who ride for me in a way that I'm very self-sufficient, and it's actually hard sometimes to support me, but they do it anyway. But I'm so grateful to that, because you cannot infiltrate new spaces and do things that are hard, where some days you come home and you think, oh my God, what am I doing? What am I doing?
But then
Is this
you
crazy?
have people that
and you have someone who's going to say,
call.
you got this.
Yeah.
But also the people who say, think about it differently. And I would build one further. The angels are important, but so are the devils.
Oh, yes. 100%.
The people who have said to me, are you sure? Or you can't do this, or is she the right person, have also been instrumental because I'm driven by that.
I'm very driven by that. Say me no, and I'm going to prove you otherwise.
I'm like, do you know the
No,
legacy, the
exactly.
lineage I come
for
from?
me,
Like,
it's the same thing of saying, I'm going to do it.
the speculation, or is she like this? Is she that? Does she care about this? Is it? I am like, it's even though it's a small part of the voices that are positive are so much more important and so much bigger. There is something good also about people who test you because they also make you question.
Yes.
And it's okay to say, do they have a point? Often they don't, but they make you go deeper. They make you,
yes, reflect and reflect
so
and to think. It's super important.
I don't dismiss. People say ignore it, but I don't think you should ignore it. I think you should go, what is making them
you should
act
pay
like
attention,
that? Yeah.
Yes.
Is it them? Is there something? Is there a grain of truth?
Because sometimes it can be something that you haven't recognized, but there is a point that you can evolve from what they're saying, but then prove them wrong, but not considering what they
not
are.
taking it heart personally.
No.
But so I thank all of the people who also are the doubters who are.
I thank you. It's so important. I always say that gratitude is not about being grateful for the good.
Yes.
But you have to be grateful for
everything.
Everything.
Everything
the good and the bad.
is what makes us us. The good, the bad, the ugly. And I'm super, super, super blessed to have so much good. And I'm also blessed to have the ugly.
Amazing. Vanessa, you were just like incredible. We could stay here
I know,
forever.
We're going to continue at a dinner.
Yes, we're going to do it like season 2. Watch this space. But thank you so much for being so vulnerable, so open about your career, your childhood, your success, your challenge. I think everyone that's listening to us today will feel even more inspired by you.
Thank you for being so inspiring.
I've been like waiting for this moment and I'm so grateful.
But for me, it's like I love to speak with people who have also like walked the walk, and everything that you've built and the community you've built, it speaks so much to me. So like we moved heaven and earth with 2 busy schedules to make this happen. But for me, it's so additive. Like every conversation makes me stronger, think differently. And also I love to talk. I'm actually a complete introvert, but if you give me a mic and something I'm interested in, I will stand on stage, I'll sit for hours. So this is heaven for me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much
such
for
an inspiration.
me.
And thank you so much for everyone that has been listening to this episode. So I think you will feel as inspired and as in love with Vanessa as I am. So such a great story, such a great inspirational for us that, if you're feeling different, just doesn't mind. So the word, it can be fit to all of us. Doesn't matter where you come from, what is your language, what's your culture. Vanessa, thank you
my
so
darling.
much.
So
and
much
if
fun.
you're not following us yet, make sure you do. Amazon, Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. And I see you guys on our next episode. Thank you so much. And thank you so much.